Good afternoon. We are just so pleased to be here. I want to thank Dan. He was a little bit humble in his announcement of how this came together. I mean, he really did a yeoman's job of going after and seeking the different speakers and not taking no for an answer and supporting Mia, myself, as well as there was a whole team. Tony, he's standing there with the camera, and Raquel, who's out manning the desk. This truly was a public-private partnership. I mean, we spent many days, many evenings planning it, and finally it has come together. I will tell you, in the afternoon session, we had to cut the list off. People were calling Thursday and Friday and saying, I must get in, I must get in. And why is there such an interest in a program called Opportunity Zones? Because people believe that it really has the possibility this time to change lives. And they want to know how it's going to change their lives, how it's going to change their possibility for employment, how it's going to change their possibility for affordable housing, how is it going to change their possibility for a new life. So before we start talking about the what, the actual instrument, the opportunity zone, we wanted to talk a little bit about the why and take it up a notch to the global level, to let you know that these aren't new problems and new issues, but globally we've been working on them, and still there is a search for a solution. Globally, there's a search for a solution. Then we wanted to bring it back down to what is going on here and how more collaboration, like public partnerships, and in a model that Nia will present to you, we have a vision that might change the world. So we're going to start off a little bit with UN Sustainable Development Goals. We believe there are two that really are correlated very well with opportunity zones. That's SDG 8 and SDG 11. SDG 8 is employment opportunities for all, and SDG 11 is sustainable cities for all. And then we'll talk a little bit about our paper called The Future of Work and Entrepreneurship for the Underserved. We presented that paper in April. Nia presented her model. We presented it at the International Conference on Business and Economic Development. It was very well received. The proceedings are published, and we will be publishing in a journal. And we won't talk about the whole paper, but we'll talk about the pieces that relate to SDG 8 and SDG 11. And then finally, we'll do we'll talk about the collaborative economic ecosystems for sustaining local economic development. And Nia will share with you the model that she has worked on while here at Customers Bank. Now, in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17. Most of you have heard of them in one form or another. But the goal 8 being employment for all, and many of the cities have underemployment, especially when you look at underemployment of the youth. Provost Okereke talked about our issue for career placement. I was talking to Adrian, and I was saying that, you know, across the world, we work with scholars in Kenya, scholars in Chile, and Jamaica, and we all have a similar problem. Our top 5 or 10% we can place anywhere. The good average student or above average student has a hard time in being placed. And so therefore we are creating higher ed product with debt that have no place to go. And this is not just a US problem, this is a global problem. My colleague in Chile prepares PhD physicists, and they can't find employment in the universities there, and they've started to go towards looking at entrepreneurship as a way of not leaving the country. They don't want to leave the country and go somewhere else. So they're looking at how to make opportunities and create jobs. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the folks who are looking at this a little closely, and that's because they're talking about metrics. And every time you talk about OZs, opportunity zones and metrics, the room goes silent. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Global Impact Investment Network, which is a membership organization of impact investors globally. They've been doing this for a while. In 2016, they profiled their membership base and saw which one of them aligned to the SDG goals. So they are already looking at impact investment and which SDG goals they're aligning to as a way of seeing how we can impact the UN's goal. Now, the UN has an ambitious goal of alleviating poverty by 2030, and it is ambitious. And the reason that they had to go to the private sector, and they did significant outreach, was the public sector either doesn't have the will or doesn't have the bandwidth. And so they found more than ever, they're asking the public sector to participate in solving social problems. And so in April of 2019, that was just a month ago, the DIN released core characteristics of what they're trying to frame as what they're going to be considering as impact investments. And it said, one, they must be intentional for positive social and environmental impact. Two, they must use evidence and impact data in investment design. Three, they must manage impact performance. And four, contribute to the growth of impact investing. And so that's all I'm going to say about what, but I just wanted you to know the context that this is not a problem that's unique to the US. This is a global issue with global problems that folks are working on and have some traction. Maybe not the answers, but they have some traction. So I'll tell you a little bit about the research that we were doing. The research was funded by the Carnegie and CUNY. We had two conferences, one on social entrepreneurship, one on corporate social responsibility. We did about 10 study abroads to different countries studying entrepreneurship, and we wrote about 10 papers with different scholars from the countries that I mentioned. And so the first piece we're going to talk about is global wealth and income disparities, and I'm not going to talk much about exploring options for increasing utilizations, but I will talk about what we do see as the hope, and we see it on two tiers. We see it in the technology, and we don't want our students to run away from the technology. We want them to embrace the technology, and we see it in entrepreneurship, because many of the larger corporations are downsizing. Many of the larger corporations are not finding the need for this labor force that we are creating. And so what we're saying is we want to create job creators. Okay, and then Nia will talk about the unity of community and capacity building, and she'll direct you to the chart that's on the back. If there is no other takeaway from my comments now, I want you to look at this chart called Global Wealth and Income Disparities. This data became available to us in the fourth quarter of last year, and it's the very first time we had the ability to look at region across region, country across country, what the income disparities were. And what they found was the top 1% of earners increased twice as much as the bottom. The moderate income gains were made by the bottom, 50%. But where the squeeze really was in the middle class. And it wasn't from the bottom, but it was from the top 1%. And some of that is coming from the tech, innovation, entrepreneurship, wealth creation. 15, 20 years ago, no one knew about Amazon, or maybe a little bit later, and now the president of Amazon is the richest man in the world. It's a lot of that that's been going on in that top 1%. Now, we're not saying that we could create those 1%ers, but we're saying that maybe we could create enough that we move some people from the bottom 50% up to the middle class or even higher. And so, rises in wealth inequities are extreme in both the US and Russia. Now, this is critical. 10% of the income earners in the US earn 50% of the wealth. Now, what does that mean to you and me? If you're not in that top 10%, the rest of us, the 90%, are running after the 50% that's left over. That is significant and may not be sustainable. In fact, some of the folks on the West Coast are already doing studies about what to do with the excess labor if you don't need it, and it's prepared. Okay, so the transfers from the wealth from the public to the private sector has been going on. So there's just no bandwidth in the public sector anymore. And then you may say projections, things can change in the U.S. The economists have said the projection is going to get worse in the U.S., not better. They may get better in the European Union if everything stays as it is now. So that's what the projections are. But we are very hopeful. And we're hopeful because we believe that the future is in technology and entrepreneurship. And we believe that diverse, creative, and agile entrepreneurial teams of persons can cost-effectively produce for niche markets as small as units of one. That's why it's important to nurture them, to develop them. I was talking with Adrian a little bit before. We talked about the incubators and the accelerators, the importance, because most of you know most businesses fail in the first 5 years. So how do you keep them running so that they can scale and really have some economic benefit? You will look at the chart that's from Kaufman. It says New York, where we're sitting right now, has the second most startups in the country. So a lot of entrepreneurial innovation activity is happening right here that we can help to foster. And so technology is vital. We believe that the universities are vital. We are preparing the workforce. But our model hasn't changed in years and years and years. So we need to change to become more agile. Provost Akbariki talked about certifications, developing certifications to augment the curriculum that takes a long time to change. How do we get just-in-time preparation for our students so that they will have skills in the marketplace where 10 years from now we don't even know what the demands might be? Okay, and in other countries, it is even more dire. I can tell you, my colleague from Kenyatta University, at Kenyatta University, they have 70,000 students. They just got word that the university was insolvent. And a part of the reason is that they're diverting some of the funds from the public institution to the institutions that are working in tech, so that that workforce will be ready in time, and they're bypassing some of what we used to do. So around the world, there's a transformation going on in the need to develop talent and the need to change lives. We believe that entrepreneurship and the development of entrepreneurship in small businesses, is the fastest path and most sustainable path to SDG 8, that's the employment, and once you add the income, the other things will follow in the city because most of our students live in cities. And so with that, we will have Via come forward and tell you about the model for collaborative ecosystems for sustaining local and economic development.